I have to tell you that a couple things about Enrique. First of all, he went to Duke University on a soccer scholarship. And also I discovered that Enrique had a certain career as a tomato grower, quite a serious career, and that he had for some time, a very popular soap opera series that he wrote. So, kind of amazing and fantastic. But what actually best prepared you to be the vocal, outspoken, radical mayor for Bogota that brought with it a lot of pain because you did things so quickly and so radically?
I think the issue is equity, the passion for equality, for people being respected, for people being happier. What prepared me? I think just it's like you can imagine. For example, I was a student in Paris, and I was extremely poor student in Paris. Extremely poor, and I would work 4 or 5 nights a week, all night in a hotel and all this. And even though I was very poor, I was extremely happy because a great city provides so many great things. You know, it's an equalizer. It has beautiful parks, beautiful museums, great public transport. So maybe this also made me very aware that if we can make, the whole planet has adopted market economy. Clearly, we all believe in the world that the best way to manage most of society's resources is through private property and the market. It's more efficient. The problem with the market is that it creates inequality. Some people have to make more money, some make less, some corporations succeed, some others go broke. So what kind of equality can we talk about today? I think cities can create a very important kind of equality, which is equality of quality of life for many people, especially for children who have access to great libraries, to parks, to public transport. So if some people have bigger cars or more expensive cars or bigger houses, but cities, so I think if you ask me what prepared me for it, just the obsession that I thought this thing would work because I had lived it myself.
Well, I think it has worked. And I was in Bogota several months ago and walked through some of these really delightful pedestrian areas, fantastic restaurants, a few policemen with German shepherds, however. But what was really interesting, quite often we just cover over our sidewalks with bits of asphalt and concrete, and the quality of the cobblestone and brick there was such a beautiful attention, not just to the concept of public space, but to how to detail it and make it enduring. You must have had a remarkable urban design department behind you as mayor. How did that develop?
We gave a great importance to architecture. We even made many parks, and we would never let one architect design more than 5 because we wanted each to have a little character, we made architectural contest so that it was not even the mayor who chose or the government, but the society of architects who chose who were the winners to do libraries or to do many things.
Were you looking at Barcelona at the time? Because Barcelona was developing all the public spaces. What cities were inspiring you at the time?
Well, Barcelona already had done the transformation much before us. Barcelona was perhaps the great leader in the world in making a city more for people after the big mistakes of the 20th century.
Right.
But I do believe in architects. I think architects take an idea, and if they are good architects, they will always make something wonderful, and especially architects for the same cost. Normally, I believe design clearly can make things much more beautiful. And many small things. For example, we do not have a fantastic lakefront like Toronto. This is such a treasure.
Yeah, it is.
We have just some drainage canals. And still, we began to build, for example, just pedestrian spaces along the drainage canals, which before had been completely wasted. They had been even roads for cars had been built, or they had been dumps or trash dumps, and it would just transform the life of our neighborhood. A well-designed pedestrian space next to a drainage canal. So I am a firm believer in architects and architecture because, but of course, we have to let them work, you know, we have to bring them in because sometimes in the developing world, the government just want to make some big roads for cars and they forget about the architecture.
Enrique, I want to give the audience a chance, if I can,
Of course.
to ask some questions. So I think we should just throw it open to some questions and go ahead.
Question regarding getting the power to do all that transformation. Were you allowed to be a dictator, or did you have to go through a lot of committees?
Yeah,
and a
so
lot
of
different
course.
people?
Oh,
'Cause nothing
this
happens
is-
that fast here.
I'll rephrase it if you want.
This is the institutional aspect is very important. He asked how could we get this through government and politics? How did we do wherever? Well, in Bogota, there are some important advantages. First of all, 90% of Bogota metropolitan area is one municipality. In 1954, Canada is a big example to the world it is. They have fused many municipalities, and I know there is discussion about this in Canada. Some people like it, some don't. But I think this is very important for equality because then you can take money from the rich municipalities and invest it in the poor municipalities. In Bogota, it was 7 municipalities were fused into one in 1954. So most of the city is only under one municipality. So you can really take money from the rich areas and invest it in the poor areas. Also, the mayor has a lot of power.
That's very useful.
But,
It's very good mayor.
but of course it has political costs also. To do things is difficult, and if you touch powerful interests, it's difficult. But basically,
But where did you find the money to affect all of this radical
when you
change?
look at this, most of the things that we did do not cost much money. I mean, to do sidewalks or to put a good busway is not a very expensive thing. It's very costly politically because, especially if I were to explain to you before we put these buses, what was there before? What was there before was tens of thousands of almost individually owned buses which would fight for passengers like crazy. They would dump the passengers in the middle of the streets. And they would kill many passengers in this race against each other for passengers. But they were very powerful. They were extremely powerful. They were an extremely powerful political force which could bring the city to its knees when they did a strike, for example. So most of these things, I mean, some of these things are relatively costly. But for example, the most expensive library we did, which was a really fantastic library with the most famous architect in Colombia in the 20th century, is called Rogelio Salmona, cost less than $15 million. So the difficult thing was not so much the money, it's rather the political cost and knowing what is it that you want to do. And it's still a never-ending battle because the only real guarantee that these things will continue to change is that people like it. And I think that one thing that is important is that what we did in Bogota had influence in many cities of Colombia, even in many Latin America and the developing world. Just small things like bicycle ways, big sidewalks. We made some very interesting, some of the things have not been followed, but we made the great schools that we put in the poorest neighborhoods. We brought the best private schools in the country to manage these schools. This was a very interesting experiment. It was not just a beautiful building, but of course in most developing countries, the best schools are private schools where the upper middle class children go. Now, we got the best private schools in the country to manage some beautiful new schools in the poorest neighborhoods of the city. Of course, this again is a huge conflict with some teachers' unions who don't like this type of competition. I think the competition is good between the traditional education and some new experiments. But
And did this experiment work? I mean, it had like increased
Oh, this
literacy.
thing, I mean, this experiment was amazing. The results are amazing. In these schools that were built, even the World Bank has made studies showing how these children in the poor neighborhood are achieving amazing results.
It's fantastic.